At the Department of Commerce in Washington, senior government officials have taken to waiting in parking garages, watching for a specific black town car. They are waiting for permission to do their jobs. The man in that car is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He recently issued a strict mandate requiring his personal sign-off on any government action that involves China. Without his direct approval, the regulatory machinery stops. That hesitation has spread across the entire government. When the Pentagon drafted its latest defense strategy, they were ordered to rewrite it to adopt a much softer, conciliatory tone toward Beijing. The White House even forced lawmakers to water down the title of a Senate bill originally called the Fight China Act. The legislation still passed, but only after they scrubbed the country's name from the title entirely. Inside the administration, national security aides have a name for this systemic, government-wide pause on any aggressive policy toward Beijing. They simply call it the Busan freeze. The executive branch has essentially instituted a gag order on its own offensive strategy. Officials who built their careers on confronting Beijing are now paralyzed by a single guiding rule: do not rock the boat. To see why that is so jarring, you have to look at the baseline. The first Trump administration spent 4 years cementing a bipartisan consensus that categorized China as America's most critical adversary. And the second term started exactly the same way. The administration doubled down, aggressively slapping tariffs on Chinese goods that briefly spiked to nearly 150%. They also drafted the America First investment policy, a directive designed to strictly block Chinese investments and permanently choke off Beijing's access to American AI tech and engineering talent. Then, the momentum vanished. Maximum economic pressure evaporated into bureaucratic surrender. China had found a point of leverage capable of stopping the entire U.S. offensive. In April, Beijing deployed a trade weapon it hadn't used in the previous administration: a total shutdown of rare earth mineral exports. Rare earths are required for almost all high-tech applications, and China has a near-total monopoly on refining and exporting them. If shipments stop, U.S. manufacturing is paralyzed. You cannot build electric vehicles, modern data centers, jets, or submarines without them. This crisis hit at the worst possible time for Washington. The U.S. was simultaneously bogged down by a military conflict with Iran, draining attention and geopolitical capital. By simply closing off one resource bottleneck, Beijing exposed the fragility of the American supply chain. It instantly neutralized Washington's leverage. Inside the White House, the focus shifted to immediate damage control. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and trade officials urgently pushed the administration to dial down the tariffs. They needed to appease Beijing to get the minerals flowing again. The turning point came in October, during a diplomatic summit in the South Korean city of Busan. There, the two leaders struck a fragile détente. To maintain the truce and secure the critical minerals, the U.S. agreed to freeze the hostile actions it had spent months preparing against China. The Busan deal represented a strategic retreat, sacrificing long-term technological containment for immediate industrial survival. After Busan, the administration began actively dismantling its own offensive capabilities. Advisors viewed as China hawks were fired. Stephen Miller was tapped to manage the new policy, ruthlessly ensuring no department made any moves that might anger Beijing. The Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. slowed its enforcement so significantly that lawyers began advising clients to push deals through, knowing the oversight panel would wave Chinese capital into the country with almost no scrutiny. You can see the shift in how the government handled routers. National security officials desperately wanted to ban TP-Link, a China-linked networking company, over fears that their software could allow foreign spying on sensitive U.S. infrastructure. But banning a Chinese company by name would violate the terms of the Busan freeze. So the FCC used a workaround. They issued a blanket ban on all new foreign-made routers universally. To avoid offending China, the U.S. had to sabotage its own regulatory precision. Now, trade relations have basically reset to the 2024 status quo. The U.S. is right back to hoping China will buy massive quantities of soybeans and Boeing aircraft just to manage the bilateral trade deficit. But the technological cost is severe. By sidelining officials who supported tough export controls, the U.S. opened the door for NVIDIA's advanced AI chips to flow back into China, accelerating the exact domestic tech industries Washington had tried to starve. And the messaging has completely flipped. Instead of blocking access, the administration is now openly inviting Chinese factories to set up shop inside the United States to create jobs. The Busan freeze successfully kept the supply chains running and averted an immediate disaster. But it locked the United States into a posture of mutual damage control, trading away the tools required to maintain its strategic and technological lead.